You're listening to the Online Business Blueprint brought to you by PlatformLaunchers.com. I'm John Stange, and it's great to be with you this week, as always, because here on the show, we talk about building and growing and monetizing your online platform. We talk about taking your passion and turning it into a platform so that you can earn a paycheck. You can find a whole bunch of resources that we have that'll help you do just that, including our 21-day platform development planning guide. You could find those at platformlaunchers.com, and we hope you'll check that out. But this week, our big question is this: are you too comfortable to take a risk? I don't know if that's something that you've thought about in recent days. It's certainly something that I've thought about. Are you too comfortable to take a risk? I want to throw that out there to you. I just threw that question out to our members club who are live on this call as I record the podcast right now. They're a group of fine entrepreneurs, people who have taken risks, but also people who have at times probably felt a little too comfortable to take risks. We've all wrestled with that. And so I just want to throw that out there. If you're listening to us right now, are you too comfortable to take a risk? Now, let's start off as we attempt to answer that question. And by the way, I'm going to give you 4 areas in just a moment where I want to encourage you to take a risk. But before we even get into that, I want to share a little bit about somebody that I consider a noteworthy historical figure. One of my favorite personalities in modern American history, sort of modern American history, is Teddy Roosevelt. Now, Roosevelt was president, roughly 125 years ago. So some might argue that maybe that's not terribly modern. But in the early 1900s, starting off the 1900s, he was the president of the United States. And there are all sorts of things that are interesting to talk about regarding him. Certainly, the more you analyze him, the more you'd realize the man certainly wasn't perfect. None of us are. But he had traits that I find inspiring. He had certain personal traits and different things that he would invest himself in that I just find admirable. And I've taken a lot of inspiration from him. And there are certain aspects of my life that I would say that I have attempted to model some of his positive traits in my own way. And things that I've observed in him that I find particularly inspiring. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that, and I can honestly say that my entrepreneurial efforts, my online businesses have benefited from some of these things that I've gleaned some inspiration from Teddy Roosevelt. Now, Roosevelt believed in living what he would call the strenuous life. I don't know if that phrase appeals to you, the strenuous life, but that's what he would encourage people to live a strenuous life. That's what he believed in. He was not interested in just coasting through his days on this planet. He was not interested in continuously attempting to avoid hard things like many people do. Roosevelt was also a man of many interests. He was a man of many activities. And in fact, in one of his best known quotes, and by the way, this is one of my favorite all-time quotes, but in one of his best known quotes, this one that I'm about to share, he actually encouraged others to be active like he was active. He encouraged others to be active as well. And I love the way he said it. He said it like this. There's a direct quote from Teddy Roosevelt. He said, "Get action, do things, be sane, don't fritter away your time, create, act, take a place wherever you are and be somebody, get action." So he starts off the quote by saying, "Get action." He ends the quote by saying, "Get action." Teddy Roosevelt said that quite a few years ago. And I have to say, I feel something when I read that particular quote, particularly when I think about how this man chose to live his life. And so I wondered, does an admonition like that from someone like Teddy Roosevelt, a certainly very accomplished man, does an admonition like that, does it inspire you? I find it inspiring. Does it inspire you as well? He said, get action. Get action. Don't fritter away your time. Be someone who creates. Be someone who acts. Take a place wherever you are. Get action, right? So can you honestly say, when you think about the things that he said there, can you honestly say that you aren't presently frittering away your time? Are you creating helpful things and doing what you can to serve others right where you presently are? These are the type of things that he would encourage us to be thinking about. And there's certainly things that I think about with regularity, particularly as I read that quote. Now, advice like Roosevelt's, I think, is helpful at all seasons of life, but I'm finding it notably helpful during a season of life where I think it would be a little bit easy for me at this point to coast. And even as I confess that, I have to say, I don't want to coast, but there is enough momentum behind what I'm doing online that I could probably take it easier than I do. But I'm just going to be honest with you, and those that know me well will not be surprised by this statement. It does not appeal to me to coast. That's just not how I'm wired. I just don't want to live my life that way. That doesn't appeal to me. The drive and the ambition that I had when I first started building my online platform, that's actually a drive that I want to continue. And I want that to be something that I'm feeding as I continue to do my work. But I don't want to do this alone. What I mean by that is this, if you're listening to what I have to say right now, I want you to work with me and resist the temptation to get comfortable and to start coasting, even if you realistically could. Even if it was possible right now for you to just coast for the rest of your life, I would really like to encourage you not to be somebody who chooses to coast. Wherever you are on your journey to build your online business, I'd like you to just take a moment to think about what I'm about to ask. I want you to take a moment to answer this upcoming question honestly. And my question is this, it's the same as our title tonight. Are you too comfortable to take a risk? Are you too comfortable to take a risk? Now, that can be a challenging question to attempt to answer, whether you've been at this for a while or whether you're just starting out. In fact, in both scenarios, I often witness some risk averse behavior. I see this a lot with a lot of people that holds many of us back from being able to see some amazing things take place. And I have to tell you, there isn't a single thing that I've done in business that didn't involve some level of risk, at least at the start, but probably, if I'm honest, it involves some level of risk in an ongoing way. One of my favorite examples, by the way, to just tell about relates to the risk that I took in 2021 when I started Platform Launchers. It's several years ago now, but based on the questions that I was regularly receiving, I honestly believed that Platform Launchers could become a successful online platform. But the only way for me to really know was to take some risks. And I'm going to outline for you 4 risks that I had to take. And there are 4 areas that I would highly encourage you to be at least willing to take some risks. The first risk is this: I needed to risk some money. I really did. I needed to risk some money. I'll give you a little background. I wanted Platform Launchers to be the best that it could be right from the start. It was my desire to offer a platform that operated smoothly. I wanted it to also appear professional. So if you went to the website, if you worked around the website, if you observed how it was structured, I wanted you to be able to look at it and say, this looks very professional. This looks like this gentleman has taken some time to invest in this. This is working properly. I also wanted the site to be very user friendly, and I wanted to make sure that it was very easy to manage from my end. Now, that's a lot to ask when you're setting up a platform, but to do this, I also knew that I was going to need to invest in some sort of a software solution that could do many of these things for me, including managing my website, managing my podcast, managing my email list, managing my online courses, managing my membership community, even managing payment processing. That's a lot, again, to be asking of a software solution, but I wanted it to be really user-friendly. I wanted it to look professional. I wanted it to be highly, highly functional for both users and for me. And as I looked at different options and thought about what was out there, I knew that there were several things that I could choose, but I also knew that because I was asking it to do so much, there was one option that I was pretty convinced was going to be highly effective at accomplishing all of these things. And so I selected Kajabi. You've heard me mention Kajabi a bunch of times. By the way, if you're listening to this via the podcast, I have an affiliate link to Kajabi in the show notes of this episode, and I'd encourage you to check it out. You'll be able to use it for free and try it out. But I have to tell you, Kajabi, it's effective. It's very effective. I've built several platforms using it, but as you can imagine, it certainly isn't free. Right? If you're going to use it, it's eventually you're going to have to pay for it in one way or another. It certainly isn't free. And so I thought about that, and I thought, I think I need to risk some money here. And but since I live debt free, and I've done that for a number of years now, and since I already had multiple streams of income that were already established, I thought, you know what? I'm going to take the risk and I'm going to buy the higher end software because I think it's going to make the experience for the users. I think that's going to make their experience better. I think it's also going to make my experience as the manager of all of this a little bit better as well. And I have to tell you, I've never regretted that decision. It has been a win for me. It's been a win for the people that I'm serving. But again, it was a risk. And the initial risk that I thought I was taking in that moment, it's certainly born to be true, is this idea of risking some money. So that was the first risk, one of four. The second risk is this. I needed to be willing to risk my track record / reputation. You might need to risk your track record and your reputation a little bit as well. When you start something new, whatever it is, you may think it's going to be successful. I certainly thought Platform Launchers was going to be successful, but you don't really know until you take the risk to start it and tell others about it. So when I started Platform Launchers, just to give you some background there, I was already succeeding with the content and with the online platform that I had created that highlighted my faith-based content. That was already off to the races. That was doing well. And I guess I could have coasted. I could have looked at that and said, all right, I've got something established. I could coast. I could create some new stuff from time to time. I didn't really have to, but I could have coasted at that point and not taken any new risks. But like I said earlier, that is not how I am wired. I am not wired to just coast. I am not wired to just kind of, just float through life, not taking risks or taking chances. Platform Launchers, admittedly, it could have failed. And some would argue that if it did fail, that would have made my track record and possibly my reputation look a little bit less than stellar. People would have looked at it and said, hey, John took a risk on this and it didn't work out. But here's the thing. I was willing to take the risk anyway. I didn't want to fail, but I was willing to fail in my attempt to bring my idea to life. So that was a second area of risk. Yes, I risked finances, but I also risked my track record, and to a certain degree, my reputation. But there's a third area of risk that I needed to be willing to take. And I think you will need to be willing to take the same risk as well if you're building an online business or an online platform. And that's this. I needed to risk my time or the usage of my time. Now, I will admit, and I just had a conversation over dinner with one of my sons, my son Daniel, who, by the way, was a guest expert on here just a couple months ago. But I had a conversation with Daniel about this idea of risking time, just a couple hours ago over dinner. And I admitted to him, and I'll admit to you, that there are a few things in this world that bother me as much as activities that honestly feel like a waste of my time. I have some patience for what I would call time wasters, but I don't have a lot of patience for that. I have some, but not too much. But when you're starting something new, whether it's an online business, whether it's an online platform, whether it's a ministry, whether it's something else, there's a real risk that you're going to invest a considerable amount of your time into making it work. And that's going to take place maybe early in the morning, maybe late in the evening, maybe during time when you could be relaxing on the weekends, or maybe all three. And here's the thing. That's a risk you're going to have to take. You're going to need to invest time into building and managing what you've built. And I'm just going to ask you, is that a risk that you'd be willing to take without knowing for certain that the investment of your time is going to pay off? Most people would not dare to take a risk like that. And by the way, that's why many people are missing out on some very special and unique opportunities in life. But if you're going to propel forward with your online platform, with your online business, with the ministry you're leading, with really anything like that, if you're trying to get something off the ground, you're going to need to risk your time. And I needed to risk my time in order to get Platform Launchers or any of the other things off the ground that I've gotten off the ground. But there was a fourth thing. And this, for some people, might be the hardest of all. Maybe you're willing to risk your money. Maybe you're willing to risk your reputation. Maybe you're willing to risk your time. But the fourth risk, some might even say feels a little bit dangerous, but it's a very real risk that you're going to have to be willing to endure as you get something set up from the ground or from scratch. And that's this. You need to be willing to risk rejection. I needed to risk rejection. You are going to need to be willing to risk rejection. Rejection can be one of the most painful things in this world to experience, to endure, to put up with. But here's the thing, it's just a painful reality of life. We have all been rejected at one time or another in one sphere of life or another. Maybe when you were growing up, or even as an adult, you were rejected by someone you were interested in dating. Maybe you've been rejected by an employer that you wanted to work for and they told you no. Or maybe even something like, when you're buying a car, maybe you've made an offer and that offer was rejected by the salesperson as you were trying to, kind of work a deal to get your car. We've all dealt with rejection, relationships, work context, selling a car, buying a car, anything like that. How do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with it? When you experience rejection, how does that go down? Can you stomach it? Many people cannot. You're going to need to be one of those people who can. Now, I have a secret benefit that has helped me to learn to deal with rejection, and it may surprise you, but then again, for many of you, maybe it won't. I have served in pastoral ministry now for several decades, full time for 27 years, but you could add a couple years on top of that part time. So we're almost at 30 years that I've served in pastoral ministry. And during that time, I have to tell you, and again, probably not a surprise to many of you, I have experienced more than my share of rejection serving in this role. Now, sadly, when you're serving in a role like a local church pastor, people kind of reject you with regularity. It does happen with more regularity than you really wish that it would, but that's the reality of it. And if I'm honest, when it happens, it sometimes makes me feel kind of used. It sometimes makes me feel kind of conditionally valued. If I'm meeting a need for somebody, I'm great. If I stop meeting that need, or if I'm not doing it as well as they hope that I would, it's kind of like I'm useless, right? And some people have been particularly critical in their rejection. But I have to tell you, over time, the Lord, by his grace, has allowed me to learn to deal with that a lot better. Certainly a lot better than I used to. I think it's always kind of like a lifelong process of learning to deal with things like this. But during this season of life, I have to tell you, I'm learning not to let it get the best of me. When I deal with rejection, which is on occasion, regularly sometimes, sometimes I go for stretches where I feel like the Lord gives me a little bit of a break. But during this season, I have to tell you, I can honestly say that I'm learning not to take rejection quite as personally as maybe I did in the past. And because I've learned that lesson, or I could say I'm learning that lesson, right? It's something that you kind of learn gradually over the course of your life. That's definitely helped me in life. That's definitely helped me in ministry. It's definitely helped me in business, learning to deal with rejection. Now, when you start an online business, when you start an online platform, people are going to have opinions about what you do. That's probably not something that should surprise you. People are going to have opinions possibly about everything you do. Many are going to like what you have to offer, and some won't. Some are going to use what you're making available and then abruptly quit using it. Others may ask for refunds. Others may give you other opinions. If you can put up with the occasional rejection that you may receive, I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy just the blessing of being able to work with some amazing people. But you got to get through the rejection first. You got to be able to build up kind of that fortitude or that stomach to put up with rejection. It's a real risk to put something out there because you're going to risk being rejected. But here's the thing, there are people out there who will genuinely appreciate what you're doing and who will join you in your efforts. And many of them will make what you're doing even better by offering their insights and their involvement and ideas that you would not have devised on your own. And by virtue of interacting with them, they're going to put ideas in your mind or help you refine what you're doing. And it's going to be so helpful and it's going to be so delightful. And they'll also, if you're building an online community or anything like that, things that I very much enjoy doing, I have to tell you, the people that the Lord sends your way, they will add to the culture of your community in some very special ways, but you're going to have to endure some rejection along the way to get to that sweet moment, to get to that sweet spot. So again, let me encourage you, if you're willing, to take some risks that might make you feel uncomfortable. Don't be so enamored with your comfort that you stop taking important risks. To get where you're trying to go, you're going to need to take some risks. You may need to risk some money as you invest in what you're building. You may need to risk your track record or your reputation for success, because you don't know if what you're building is going to succeed. Hopefully it does, but maybe it's going to be a learning lesson along the way that helps you build something else in the future. There are plenty of things I've done in life and in online business that did not succeed, but they taught me something that I can utilize in other ways, right? So you risk some money, you risk your track record, you risk your reputation, you're going to risk your time, you're going to risk rejection. These are categories of rejection that are, or risk, I should say, that are very, very real for online entrepreneurs. But I have to tell you this, as someone who presently, right now, lives on the other side of having taken those risks, I can honestly testify that it was all worth it. I have no regrets in risking the finances that I risked. I have no regrets in risking my track record. I have no regrets in risking my time. I have no regrets in risking rejection. I'm glad I did it. I've met some wonderful people along the way. I've experienced so many personal benefits and financial benefits that really would not have been experienced if I wasn't willing to take those risks. So think about it. Think about Roosevelt's quote. Can I just take the liberty to read Roosevelt one more time? He said, get action, do things, be sane, don't fritter away your time, create, act, take a place wherever you are, and be somebody. Get action. Don't be too comfortable to take a risk. Thanks so much for listening to this week's show. I want to invite you to stop over at platformlaunchers.com. Jump on board with a 2-week test drive of our members club. We'd love to meet you and work together to help you build, grow, and monetize your online platform. Utilize the other resources we have over at the website at platformlaunchers.com. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you again right here very soon. Take care.